How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Terror Talk. Guys, great discussion today. I'm going to bring Russ Hamilton on, a retired CDCR sergeant, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. He's going to share with us his experience with 3 death row inmates from his time working at San Quentin. So the title of the show is Inside Death Row, a correctional officer's shocking encounters with 3 notorious death row inmates. It's going to be a great topic. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, we've done one like this before where Russ Hamilton shared his story with his interactions with the Richard Ramirez, the Midnight Stalker, I believe that his name was. I hope I'm correct on that. It was a great dialogue, great discussion. It's actually doing very well. If you guys get a chance, you could find it on my Tear Talk venue. Maybe just put in Richard Ramirez Tear Talk and it will show up. And also, I've been doing some true crime stuff. And I did post, I'd love you guys to check it out. It's a long video. It's 3 hours. But we break down the active shooter case that happened in Minneapolis. I mean, we really get into the head of the active shooter. My guest for that show was Joseph Pangaro. And it was a really good discussion. I would love for you guys to check out. I don't know if YouTube's going to share it as much as it did with the Emmanuel Harrow case, but I recommend that you guys check it out. And then me and Russ will work this week to try to see what other true crime things we can cross into to try to keep the content growing. And guys, thank you for constantly checking out the channel. It's been a little slow these last couple of days. So if you get a chance, please share it out. Get those subscribers, get those comments in, like, engage, because the more you do that, the more it helps my material get to where it's got to go. So let me get Russ real quick. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. How's it going, sir?
Good. Hey, Russ, you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Russ Hamilton. I am a former and now retired, thankfully, sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I am also a former senior juvenile correctional officer. I currently work for a company here in California where we do reentry and rehabilitation work at a local county jail, where I'm a case manager, and for a local county probation department. I am also the founder of Keepers of Chaos with a K on Facebook. And we really look to, help people with regards to mentorship, history content, training, and everything else corrections. No matter what part of corrections you serve in, whether it's, underneath the badge, or whether it's in, medical, or being a teacher, or any of the other many fine things that's required in corrections. And I am also a author of a brand new book that's just hit the market recently on Amazon. You can find it by searching for Killing Complacency, Tactical Awareness for Correctional Professionals. And I am very, very proud of that book. It's doing well, not as well as I'd like it to, though, so you should definitely buy it. And I think that it's just something that this profession, especially those of us that, go in there and put ourselves in harm's way. I think it's, about time that someone addressed the complacency issue. And I think I've done that.
Yes. And guys, if you get a chance, I think this book is a book I wrote. It's on Amazon. It's called Inmate Manipulation Decoded. It's a book used in corrections all across the nation. And guys, there's a lot of stories here. And this really shows you how people can be manipulative. And I think this also plays out well in real life. So if you guys are interested in how the criminal mind works, I would trust this book and also this book, Breaking Boundaries. Even though it centers in the correction setting, we're going to, in those books, we talk about the mind of how these criminals tend to manipulate. And you'll find that a lot of it can apply to the real world setting. Okay, so what I'm going to do, guys, tell you how this is going to work, is we have 3 people Russ is going to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a brief description of what they've done. If you guys want to kind of know a little bit more, I would recommend that you could Google them or go on YouTube. I'm sure there's going to be some videos on these guys. They are notorious. I'll tell you how they've been captured, and then we'll go into Russ's interactions with them. So the first person we want to bring up is Russ actually dealt with Randy Kraft. Whoops, wrong one. Damn it. Surprised you. Randy Kraft, the Scorecard Killer. Now, his background, he's still alive, by the way. He's probably in his 80s. His active period was between 1972 and 1983, so that's around 11 years of terror. He was convicted of 16 murders, but suspected of 65 plus. A lot of people actually think it was over 100. His MO was he targeted young males, often hitchhikers, Marines, and military personnel along the California freeway, because he was also known as the freeway killer. His signature was he kept a coded scorecard list of victims, 61 cryptic entries found in his car trunk. And as I mentioned, his current status is he's 80, still on death row at San Quentin. Profile: intelligent computer programmer, IQ of 129, described as articulate and scholarly. And the capture, they said, was a lucky break. So I got the date of May 14th, 1983 at 1 a.m. Randy Kraft's 11-year killing spree ended with a routine traffic stop when California Highway Patrol officers observed him swerving on Interstate 5 in Mission Viejo. Officer Sterling had Kraft perform a field sobriety test, which he failed, leading to his arrest for driving while intoxicated. When Sergeant Michael Howard approached the passenger side, he found a young Marine slumped in the seat with his eyes closed, partially covered by a jacket. The victim was dead. Around the Marine's feet were several empty beer bottles and an open prescription bottle. This arrest led to discovery of the infamous scorecard, a coded list that gave him his notorious nickname, containing 61 entries, each believed to represent a murder victim. What started as a drunk driving arrest became the capture of one of America's most prolific serial killers. Now, Russ, you've dealt with a lot of death row inmates, of course. What is it about this one? Why was this one the first name? Guys, this was the first name that came to his mind when we decided to do this show. So what was it about him that made you think of him first?
So the thing that really, brought him to mind first, number one is, how prolific he was. No one is probably ever going to know what the true number was. The fact that they had the whole scorecard thing that they called him. The only one I had heard him called by before really was the freeway killer. But I knew that he had been suspected in many, 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 many deaths. And when you think about, I'm dealing with someone who, wouldn't even, hesitate. They're not worried or thinking about, oh gosh, if I kill him, there's going to be some price to pay. He already has the death penalty hanging over him. I think that one of the things, though, that stood out to me, especially as a very young officer, is the types of crimes that he committed were typically the types of crimes that serial killers will commit against a female. This was definitely not the case. Everything that you read about him with regards to what the crimes were, and they were horrific. They involved, drugging victims and potentially torture and things like that. So you have a psychosexual sadist, basically killing people, and they're male. And so I think that, when you're a male and you identify like, wow, this guy would have targeted perhaps someone like me, it's kind of a little bit out of the ordinary, even for a serial killer. And so when you start to think about that, it's just, it's just one of those things. It gives you the definite heebie-jeebies. He was always, relatively polite. He was always, well-spoken. There's nothing there that stood out like, oh, he's some kind of a, computer whiz. It was nothing like that. He did seem more socially put together, I would say. And yet there were, some things that stood out. And, when I brought up before about, his proclivity for, killing young males, one of the things, in his cell was, instead of, pinup girls or things like that, it was basically, men plastered covering the cell. And so that was the kind of thing that just like stood out, gave me the EBGBs. And then reading about the crimes was, a real shocking eye opener. And I remember that even after all these many years.
Hey, Russ, do you think, a lot of people, I guess when they get locked up and they feel that, what, maybe I can no longer carry out these fantasies anymore. Do you think it lessens their impulse? Like even for him that he was locked up, that maybe now it would be a little bit more complicated for him to carry out those fantasies. So maybe the impulses start to die out as opposed to, when he's out there and he has the freedom to do it. Sometimes when they get locked up, some of them say the impulse kind of disappears because there's just too many obstacles in the way.
I've read some on these kind of things, and I don't think so. I think that the inability to carry them out actually fuels them. There's nothing really that I've ever heard that in any way has ever dampened like a true sexual sadist. And so I think that, no, I would say that, that's just a reason for them to go deeper inside their mind and relive their old kills. And because, if there was something that was actually efficacious, even if it means being in prison or being, segregated from society, I don't see that as working, but I would think that then there would be some other pathway that they could take to treat these people. And I just don't believe that.
Did he, once he got locked up, did he have a lot of media attention? How'd that affect your day to day?
No, the puddle of serial killers that we were in was deep. It was 400 or 500 at the time I was there, and so there were some ones that stood out. We'd mentioned Richard Ramirez before and things like that, but you got to understand that there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of killers there on death row. And it had probably been, some time had gone by for him. But another thing is he that might have made him more popular is if believe it or not, if he had, focused on women, he might have had, some of the hybristophiliacs coming out of the woodwork, but he was very focused on men.
Did he ever brag about his crimes to you or anything, or was he just
no? That was something I never ever heard on there. But you got to remember that all these people generally have appeals and all kinds of things in the works with regards to their legal case, and most of them are smart enough not to say anything like that.
And I don't know, like in death row, do they communicate with each other? And if they did he have any other inmates that he socialized with that were maybe notorious as well?
To one degree or another, just the fact that they're on death row makes them notorious. Their crime might not be any worse than any, lifer, so to speak, but just the fact that they're on death row automatically gives them notoriety. Nothing like that would have stood out. You got to understand that in the area that he was, I can't remember exactly which tier he was on right now, but all of those cells, they're all right next to each other, and so they can talk back and forth easily to the cell on each side, and then a little bit down. And a lot of times, they'd be fishing lines and passing notes. And, they could also, at that time, we didn't have the, what now we refer to as the dog run types. We had large security yards out there where we'd have, 8, 10, 15 guys per yard section out there, or even more. And so, they could freely communicate and talk to each other all of the time.
Was he someone that, liked to interact with staff a lot, or was he someone that liked to be kept alone? Like, did he try to communicate, or did he just not want to be bothered?
You got to understand, like, death row is just busy. And the only time that you're ever actually talking to these guys is, maybe you're giving them food, you're taking them to the shower. There are some guys that would maybe stand on the tier and talk to them, but it's not really like that. You're either doing something with the inmate or you're doing something with some other inmate. So time doesn't really pass like that. We would have all these, real large relay races is what I call them, where we would be, bringing people out by the dozens handcuffed and moving them to the yard. And so, it just didn't, there just wasn't the opportunity to have those type of interactions. It was just mass movement and chaos all of the time.
And when you were dealing with him, did you see him as, I don't know, was he a messy inmate, or was he a clean freak? What was his cell?
Nothing like that really stood out with regards to that with him. It was just striking to me the type of pictures that he chose to post on his wall.
And before we get to the next one, did he come off as someone that could have killed so many people to you during your interactions with him?
Well, yeah, but with him, it's like, you knew who he was because of the notoriety of his crime, and so you can't ever tell once you know that about a person. You can't ever know whether or not you were genuinely reacting to something or you were reacting to something based on your knowledge.
Okay, that's a good question, right? I mean, are you reacting to the man, or are you reacting to what he's done in the moment? But there is a balance of both, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes I know I could definitely get vibes off of people, but you can't view that through a lens of whether you're doing it accurately or not. If you have information that presupposes you to taking some extra precaution, and with regards to precautions on death row, you took precautions with everyone. And it didn't even matter if you knew what their crime was or not. You knew that they were in there for doing something horrible.
Yeah, and I know this is a while back. You want to remember if he got a lot of visits or not, would you?
No, and you got to understand, there's hundreds and hundreds of them, and so like when you move them to a visit, you maybe move them part way down, and then someone takes them the rest of the way to the visiting room. And there's no way you could track inside your own head even who's getting a bunch of visits and stuff. Like I'm saying, mass movement with hundreds and hundreds of individuals.
All right. Anything else you want to say about him before we get to the next one?
No, that's about it.
All right. So next one we got is Lawrence Bittaker, Toolbox Killer. Background on him. Well, he's deceased since 2019. His active periods.
Very glad for that.
Yes. And his active periods were 5 months of unimaginable terror. That's between June and October of 1979. Victims were 5 teenage girls, ages 13 to 18, with partner Roy Norris. His motive was kidnap victims in a windowless GMC van they called Murder Mac. Yep. Signature was used. Household tools, pliers, screwdrivers, ice picks for torture. Recorded audio of his session so he could relive it. Death, he died of natural causes on death row on December 13th of 2019 at age 79. His partnership was he met Roy Norris, in San Luis Obispo,
yeah.
Obispo men's colony prison, where they bonded over rape fantasies. Interesting. His capture was on November 20th, 1979. Both Bittaker and Norris were arrested after Norris told a prison friend about their crimes, and that friend, shaken by what he heard, went to authorities. The confession came from an unexpected source. Norris had been bragging about the murders to another inmate who was so disturbed he contacted police. After his arrest, Norris turned on Bittaker, agreeing to plead guilty and testify against his partner. The two had originally met while incarcerated, Bittaker for stabbing a man, Norris for a series of sexual assaults, and bonded over fantasies of rape and torture. Their partnership dissolved the moment they were caught, with Norris immediately cooperating to save his own life. Did you deal with Norris at all too?
Yeah, absolutely. Dealt with both of them. Before I got there, there had been, gosh, I even hate to bring this up because I'm not sure that I would get the story exactly right, but I think that one or the other of them at one point had tried to kill the other by smuggling in some poison stamps or something like that. I wish I could remember more about that. But yeah, the Murder Mac mobile was one of those things. The fact that he's called the Toolbox Killer, but also his nickname was Pliers. So just imagine the most horrible thing that you can imagine. with regards to pliers, and you would know some of the horrible stuff that he did. He was a despicable, horrible individual. I hated dealing with him. I hated the way he acted. I hated the way he made me feel. He was just one of those people that it was just almost more than you could bear to be around him. And he deserved to die a much more horrible death than he did, truly. But anyway, if you've ever seen the series Mindhunter, there is a scene from one part of it where this new, I want to say it's like a new FBI cadet is having to go through some stuff with regards to becoming a BAU agent, behavior analysis unit. And one of the things that they have to do is they have to listen to the audio tape that Lawrence Bittaker made of him torturing and killing a girl. And so anyway, you just know what kind of a filthy, horrible, vile individual he was. And there's not enough bad adjectives to use in all of the universe with regards to that. So anyway, good riddance that he's dead. And it was a shame that we had a political hierarchy here in California that allowed him to exist as long as he did. And that continues to this day because they've destroyed the death penalty. There's a moratorium on it. They've dismantled even the death chamber, even though the law remains on the books, because these people that run the state are unaccountable.
Yeah, and hey, Russ, by the way, that's why Kraft is still alive. He's in his 80s, or probably just
absolutely.
Hey, Russ, you said he was one of the nastiest individuals. So his personality was a lot different than Kraft. Was this person just disrespectful, resistant, etc.?
Yeah, he was. He was very. He just had no sense of anything about him. He was a narcissist. He was a psychosexual sadist. He was a little scrawny fuck, though. And it just enrages me to this day to think about it. I'm not that kind of a person, except that even to this day, to this moment, he was horrible to deal with. And he knew that, basically, I will say this, he knew that he was untouchable, and he would prove it to himself every single day. In my opinion, there's obviously probably some different, officers and whatnot that might have had better interactions with him. But I know, at one point, he had sued over getting a soggy sandwich, and I remember when I heard about that, it was just like, yeah, well, what about his victim still, And I know that we have to provide safety even for individuals like that. That's what we're supposed to do. But of all of the killers I've ever met, he is the one that bothered me the most.
And I know, obviously, during escorts, you do put your hands on these individuals to get them from A to B. Did you ever have to put your hands on them for use of force?
No. I don't know how he might have been around other people, but I don't think that he would have ever done anything to allow you to get into that good of a position on him, because he was just such a horrible individual that if you could have taken your shot, you would have. But I digress. Maybe that's not something I should say out loud, but what the heck.
And yeah, hey, Russ, real quick, how some of these guys, or whatever, these killers, they have two personas. One is what they sell to the public, the performative, and then there's the evil that's underneath that we know who they really are. Going back to Kraft and him, did you ever see both? Did you ever see maybe Kraft, the more evil side, or did you always see the performative nice side?
No, the evil side is saved for their victims. You might have, interactions that are, unpleasant or even combative. But the evil side is saved for for their victims, and it's just the rest of them is just they can be a nasty individual, but you're not their victim, and and they may try. But it's a different thing. I think people, they always want to think that, oh, these guys have split personalities or multiple personalities, and it's just not that way. That's not the way it works in real life.
And Russ, even in my experience, I've dealt with some heavy lifers, heavy timers, very famous ones. I just can't talk about it now. But with that said, I think for some of them, when you look at them, I can't explain it. Maybe it's because I know what they've done. But sometimes I don't feel like a normal connection like you would with other inmates. And what I mean by normal connection, something human. Some of these guys, especially one that I dealt with, I just felt there was nothing there. It's hard to explain. It's just something you feel in the moment. Does that make sense when dealing with some of these guys, especially someone like Lawrence Bittaker?
Yeah, I would say especially with Bittaker. I think that a lot of the ones on the surface, though, you probably would not really truly be aware that they were a killer unless maybe you got to know them a little bit better and spotted some of the things that really actually are off about them. Everybody always wants to think, oh, they're evil incarnate, and that's just not the truth. I'm not saying that they're not evil, but I think people place too much on it. I think a lot of people, want to place things on there, as far as, something being in the paranormal realm or whatever. I don't even like to give them that because that's something they would like to take on themselves. When you see, like, for instance, Richard Ramirez with his pentagram on his hand and him saying, "Hail Satan" and all that bullshit. You know what? He's just a killer. He's just a man. He's just a scrawny little guy. I mean, I know he was tall, but you know what? He wasn't strong. He was weak and he was soft. I handcuffed him plenty of times. He was weak and he was soft.
Yeah, and I'm sure they get a lot of mail, right?
Well, okay, so like Richard Ramirez, yeah, he would get a lot of mail. A lot of the other ones didn't, but they would like get lots of mail due to the fact that their cases, still in the hopper. It's the appeals court this and appeals court that and Supreme Court this, Supreme Court that, and so they would all get lots of mail. Ones like Richard Ramirez, though. He would have a bunch of, females, the hybristophiliacs, writing them and stuff all the time because they're titillated by that weird sector of that subculture.
I know you mentioned something about Kraft's cell, very unique about how he had the men post up. Anything unique about Bittaker's cell that you can remember?
No, except that I would say that my memory of that is just like he just was a dingy, filthy little rag doll. So
all right, so I got the last one here that we can go over real quick. Is Stanley Tookie Williams. So let me go ahead and move that over. Here he is. Big guy, as you could tell. Hold on one second. So a little background on him. He was executed in 2005. His crime period was 1979, multiple robberies resulting in 4 murders. He's one of the co-founders of the Crip gang in Los Angeles. I think the other one was Raymond Washington, if I remember. Victims, correct. It was, right? Raymond Washington?
Yes.
Yeah. Victims, and obviously because of the Crips, the counterculture was the Bloods. Victims were convenience. The main victims that led him to death row was convenience store clerk, motel owner, and elderly couple during separate robberies. Prison transformation, so he became anti-gang activist, authored children books, Nobel Peace Prize nominee. His execution was December 13, 2005 at age 51. He was denied clemency by Governor Schwarzenegger. And the controversy was he maintained innocence until death, became international symbol in death penalty debate. The capture and conviction. Williams was arrested shortly after the 1979 murder murders based on witness testimony and circumstantial evidence. Unlike the other cases, his capture wasn't due to a lucky break, but rather traditional police work connecting him to the crime scene. His case became complicated by his later transformation in prison and claims of innocence, which drew worldwide attention to his clemency appeals. The contrast between his alleged crimes and his later anti-violent activism created one of the most debated death penalty cases in California history, with celebrity activists and world leaders calling for commutation of his sentence. Russ, so that's the infamous Stanley Tookie Williams, the co-founder of the Crips. Now, real quick, they say this gentleman was only 5'10", but was about 300 pounds, 20-inch neck, between 19 to 22-inch biceps. I mean, was he a big guy? How was he to even handcuff and move around?
You know, I would say truthfully, I thought he was taller than that, but I will say this about him is, as far as a physical specimen went, I mean, he would be like one of those few individuals that's in the 99th percentile of all human physiques. And I mean, he had just had massive arms. You know, we had to restrain him with leg irons, wherever we would take him. You know, he was just, you know, potentially a force to be reckoned with. And so, you know, potentially very dangerous. I never knew anyone that had actually had a physical altercation or problem with him. But you know, there was, you know, always that chance. And when a person like that becomes violent, you know, you have to have superior numbers, because you know you're just not going to have superior strength. You know, you harken back, you know, to the time where, you know, they were going to do this thing about, you know, a blow up escape attempt that was going to have something to do with, you know, some type of explosives or something like that. And so you never know what you're dealing with these individuals, because they really are, you know, high power, high drama, high risk.
Yeah, I was reading something about that. That was like happened in 1988. It was like an escape plot. And actually, that goes to another good question, because a lot of people thought he was making changes. He was becoming an author. And then people actually brought up that escape plot. Do you think he really was committed to making changes and maybe being an influence when he got released? Or I'm sorry, not when he got released, if he was to beat the death penalty and get released.
So I don't think that beating the death penalty or getting released was ever going to be in the cards for him. I think that you know, the fact that he was you know, trying to push all this high drama about potentially escaping, and then claiming that he wrote a book and claiming that he was reformed. Well, that's not necessarily for me to say. I would say that the indicators, by and large, were against it. But you know, he was just there and caught in a time where, for the first time in like 30 years, they had really, like, you know, turned the switch back on with regards to the death penalty. No one had been executed in over 30 years until Robert Alton Harris was executed. And then there was like a short, swift window of, I want to say, like maybe, you know, 4 or 5 years where they did like, it might have been like 10 or 11. And to the best of my recollection, I think he was the very last one. I think they had done like, can never remember the guy's name, Ray Allen Clarence or Clarence Allen Ray. You know, one of those 3 first name guys. I think was, you know, shortly before him. They did a guy named Sirapongs, and they did Massey and several others that jumped to mind. And then that was the end of the modern era of the death penalty in California, for whatever that's worth. And so anyway, yeah. Any more questions on him?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you something. So obviously he was a man of influence. When it got closer to carrying out that death sentence, was there heightened worry about maybe retaliation, or maybe someone trying, or the group trying to prevent it?
Yeah, there were memos that came through, and so in our training and stuff, they would talk about it, and they would mention that it was imminent, and we knew, that this was going to happen. And for us, it was kind of like one of those things: is something going to happen, or is something not going to happen? And at that time and place, we weren't worried just about the Crips. We were worried about the other alliances of it, possibly drawing together the Crips and the Bloods, or the Crips and the Bloods and the BGF, and or the Crips and the Bloods and the BGF and the 415, which really at that time was like the farm team for the BGF, also
That's
known as the Kumi.
that's the Kumi African Nation, right? 415 being the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yes, correct. And so there were a lot of unknowns, and so we just didn't know if they would commit retaliation for something like that. And if I point back to my Substack, I just about 2 weeks ago, in Corrections 1, and on my Substack, did a story about the BGF, and I talked about some of the retaliatory violence that happened both at Soledad and San Quentin that led up to Black August. And I really kind of fleshed it out, and talked about all these competing influences, and how they just kind of all swarmed together in a way that unfortunately ended up killing a whole lot of CDC staff members. And so there was concern at that time, and myself included, because I understood that history, that could happen, but it just never did. And so I think that's kind of hard to say why, because usually people are looking for a reason, and it just, thank goodness, never materialized with that for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's Crips. They always, like, the gangs sometimes try to hide under some like community revolution. Like Crips would be a community revolution in progress, or if you were a Blood, you would say that they're cowards running packs. And then with Bloods, it was what was, so the insult for Bloods would be like Bloods live only one day. Well, yeah, I know slob. I'm saying, but I'm trying to do
they would call them slobs. The Crips, the Bloods would call
crabs.
the Crips crabs.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the acronym for the alliance itself. So the Crips would be Community Revolution in Progress, or the acronym of disrespect would be like cowards running packs, and Bloods would have Bloods live only one day, but then it would be brotherly love overriding our depression. That would be the and that's from the West Coast ideology. Now remember, a little too much here, but eventually the gangs travel to the Midwest, and then on my side, on the East side, you get a hybrid of the Midwest culture, so a little bit of the Folk People Alliance partnered with West Coast gangs like Bloods and Crips. And it all started in the streets, and to find its way nationally is definitely very powerful to me. Influence like that, because I've seen influence where you have, let's say, a Latin King, for example, coming out of Chicago, that makes it into one of our New York, New Jersey settings, and the respect that they get, even from the other gangs, because that's like the motherland. So if you get a Blood or a Crip that's literally from California, and they cross into one of our facilities over here, for the most part, they usually carry some bit of respect, because they are from where it originates. But again,
sometimes they're there for a purpose. Sometimes it's about trafficking. So
yeah, it's just, and Russ, real quick before we wrap things up, I mean, working on death row back in I'm assuming this would be the late 80s, early 90s. I know things are a lot different now, but I mean, it's crazy to have those interactions with these individuals. And I mean, are there ever moments where you see the man and not the monster, or you always just know that there's the monster underneath?
I think that functioning and operating on death row, you better not be operating face to face with someone that you project your own morals and values into. The risk is far too high. One of the things that I talk about in my book is, I talk about the complacency of projection. And the complacency of projection just means that you see the other person on an equal moral footing as yourself. And that's a really, really bad idea, because you are there in the midst of what's often gang warfare. Because, not everyone on death row is a serial killer, psychosexual sadist. A lot of them were, gangbangers, who were there for killing other gangbangers, or a lot of innocents too. So, you got to, be aware of your surroundings, that there's, different individuals. Most of the time, I would say the serial killers were the least of your worries, believe it or not.
All right. So, Russ, anything you like to say in closing?
Yeah, it's a really good discussion. Some of the stuff, really gets me going a little bit, because, guys like, Bittaker, who at one time, he was allowed to have that recording in his cell at one time, or at least, that was my understanding of it. Something that was, just even thinking about that is upsetting to me to this day. And I'm supposed to be a big bad prison guard or whatever, a correctional officer. But some of the crimes of these people truly are disturbing, and it kind of agitates and irritates me. With some of the people that lionize them in certain ways, or think they're really smart and just misunderstood, or that think that, oh, you know what, I could reform him. And so we'll just march down my own little set of things that irritate me, with regards to criminals who just have victims by the score and dead bodies at their feet all the time. And so anyway, I'm much more aligned myself with the victim, and the fact that some people align themselves with the perpetrator just rankles me.
Yep. And guys, don't forget, guys, we got more content to come. I'm going to cross into something again with an update on some true crime. I got to look at what's out there, see where I feel I can best apply some knowledge. I'll maybe bring Russ on, or Joe Pomponio on, or maybe Gary York, or Pingaro. We'll see what we got going on. I would like you guys, again, to check the episode out from I did yesterday. It's a long episode, but towards the very end, we break down one of the manifestos from Robin Westman, and I think you'd find it very interesting, because the stuff that we discover was stuff that was before the news just released it. I think it was interesting how we broke it down, and basically we provide, that video was 3 hours, but we provide lessons in there that will help you understand the mind of someone like that, because Joe's done shows with me before, Pingaro, about active shooters, and we usually talk about tactical stuff. We wanted to try to talk more about their way of thinking, again, not to minimize or excuse what they've done, but to get inside their head a little bit. And then we also did one a couple months back, maybe a year ago, but with Colt Gray, when that incident occurred. But yeah, guys, as always, great dialogue. Please, guys, let's get some traffic here. I lost a lot of traffic. I really haven't getting any subscribers the last couple of days, so I'm really relying on you to promote the material. I don't really trust YouTube to really push it out as it should. But with that said, as always, guys, stay safe, and see you on the next episode.